I tell people, yes, get involved, start student governments, get involved, go down to Washington, go down to the State House and see how really things are, and go online on the internet. And you can see all those different issues on political parties and campaigning and running for office. It's the internet and special C-SPAN, CNN, Fox News, all these things are open to the world. And we need, and that's a vehicle to actually get involved. And it's going to be a process. I mean, it's an enjoyable thing. We need to get our young kids, and our young kids need to understand that yes, you can get involved in government and public policy.
What would you say to a person that says, I have an interest in politics, but I'm afraid to take that first step?
Well, in anything, I mean, you're going to be afraid to take the first step. But it's a challenge. If you really want something, you're going to go after it and you're going to run. You know, when I ran for Congress, people said, Darryl, you can't run for Congress, and nobody's going to vote for you, and you shouldn't run for council. But then I decided, and I was with the Green Party at the time, and I did run for Congress, and it was a big step, and I made national news, and I talked about a lot of the issues of poverty, healthcare, education. So it was a big step. But if you want to get involved, if you want to be a part of this whole political process, you can't be afraid. You got to challenge yourself and challenge the system and challenge the people who are going to vote for you. I didn't win, but I still had the opportunity, and I spoke to a lot of people in the community all over this district, this 12th district. And, and there are some barriers, but you can overcome those barriers like I have. And you can run for Congress, and, you may do well, you never know. But, as long as you take a chance. And that's what it's all about, taking your chance and making a difference for your people.
What would you say about Barack Obama's historic bid for the presidency?
Well, one of the things about Barack Obama, he was a special individual. Graduated from Harvard Law School. I mean, he is a very intellectual person. He has worked in the African American communities, like in Chicago, helping people out, housing and education and housing reform. He's a special individual, and it's all about timing for Barack Obama. And it's so amazing how he has a rainbow coalition around him. When I say rainbow coalition, it's the same thing. Jesse Jackson in Chicago has his rainbow coalition. But it's about all people coming together and actually changing society and making it better for all people. And that's what Barack Obama stands for. And that's why he has that broad appeal. He's no radical, so people feel that, he is very acceptable. And long as he gets in office and makes some type of changes, he's not going to make changes overnight, but he's inspiring a lot of young individuals like myself and other individuals to run for Senate, to run for governor, maybe run for president one day. But he's inspiring all these younger activists, political activists, and people, social activists, to come up and says, yeah, I do want to run for office, and I do really want to make a change. And that's all about, making a change.
Tell us briefly about the Poor People's Campaign.
Well, the Poor People Campaign was started back in 1968 by Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King started the Poor People's Campaign dealing with issues of poverty and finances and education and the poor people. And one of the things Martin Luther King was planning is called Resurrection Tent City. And they did have it before he got assassinated, but that's what he was planning, bringing all the poverty people from all over the country and dealing with these issues of poverty in our country. And they did have the Resurrection Tent City, but Martin Luther King got assassinated. So with that, he got assassinated. So what happened was, they decided that, basically the movement was over during the whole civil rights movement. But now there's a new generation of activists and politicians, people that want to start the Poor People's Campaign over, and there's Poor People campaigns all over this country now. So what we're trying to do is organize and doing the philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King, dealing with poverty, dealing with poor people, and that details education, housing, the violence in our community, even also the war. So poor people are being affected all over this country. And the thing is, how do we make a change? How do we deal with Martin Luther King and his philosophy of poverty and changing society? One of the things that Martin Luther King said is that we're all caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in the single garment of destiny. And whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly, and that I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, and you can never be where you ought to be unless I am what I ought to be. Then he quotes John Donne and says that no man is an island, every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Then he goes on to say that any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. Therefore, never send to know whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. And this is how the way the world should be. That's what Martin Luther King talked about. We're all caught up in this great and inescapable network. Yes, and that we're all one people. So we should treat each other better and the same and deal with the issues of poverty. Because no longer should, we're in the 21st century now. There shouldn't be still millions of people with poverty. Millions of kids don't have health care. Millions of kids are failing in education. 1 out of 4 high school students are not graduating. And even in the city, in the inner city in New Jersey, like Camden, Newark, Jersey City, Elizabeth, all these areas where you may have 40 to 50% dropout rate. That's unacceptable in the state. And something that we have to do it. I mean, and I'm willing to fight, and I'm willing to bring new ideas to the state and even to this nation.
You have some very good ideas, and I think that you're going to make a wonderful senator. Now, in conclusion, how do you, Darrell McKell Brooks, how do you want to be remembered?
Well, basically, I want to be remembered as someone who helped, who made a change in the community, who made a change in the state, who made a change in the world. And that's what it's all about. Someone, Al Sharpton once said, he said, there's some people who don't even deserve to have a funeral because they didn't do anything with their life. And I want to be that person where people come to my funeral and says, well, Darrell Brooks helped change. He made it better for me to go to school. He provided proper health care, proper education. He dealt with the justice system. He made these things change. He fought for what was right. And that's what it's all about. Martin Luther King, who knew that it was going to be a holiday after Martin Luther King? Who knew that all these things that happened after his death basically remember Martin Luther King? I'm not saying that, I may be the next Martin Luther King, but I do want to be remembered as someone who made great changes and helped the poor people, and also the working class people that need support and need better jobs, need better health care, need better education, and how to provide scholarships for their children, and also with college students, and help deal with the issues of student loans and bringing more grants back to the schools so kids can go to get a better education and take care of their family. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's all about in American healthcare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. You've been very interesting and very enlightening. I wish you the best with all future endeavors.